In this lesson, I want to show you how to tune your tom-toms. Now, we're going to start with high tom-toms and move down to all the way down to floor tom-toms. So what I'm going to do is remove the old head off this particular drum and replace it with a new one. This one's getting a bit worn out. So I'm just going to use two drum keys here and remove two at a time. It's nice and quick. It's only a 6-lug tom, this one. It's of course Yamaha Maple Absolute hook lug. And hook lug means that these lugs actually hook on to little posts, and so that means replacing heads is really quick because you don't necessarily have to undo your tension rods all the way. It's quicker to just give them a few turns and then unhook each lug. Almost done. There we go. Unhook each lug, take off the skin, and there we go. Replace it with a fresh one. Now I'm upgrading to a Remo coated Ambassador snare drum as opposed to the Emperor clear heads I was using previously. Coated Ambassador, it's a one-ply head, fairly thin but very durable. Coated for a bit of more warmth and tone, and can also produce a brush sort of sound when using brushes, a sweeping sort of sandpapery sound. So as you might know, if you've seen my other tuning videos, you should roughly seat the head, so make sure it's somewhere stable. Just give a little bit of tension down into the center of the skin with the smooth round part of your hand. Okay. What I'll do is bring that a bit closer. Fit the top hoop again. Hook all the lugs back on. Okay. Doesn't really matter what order in this case. So what I'm going to do is just tension each lug enough that the hoop bites to the hoop and the tension rod, basically just biting together, just pulling themselves together that little bit. Okay, so there should be absolutely no tone in this drum yet. Well, there is a bit of tone actually, but it's not quite the tone I want. This is my highest tom, and I like to get a fairly high sort of natural sound out of the tom. Before we tune, we must seat the head again. You can even hear the glue cracking as I've just pressed down a little bit into the head. There we go. Now we've applied that little bit more tension, the head should probably have almost no tone at all. Yeah. But that means our head is more or less thoroughly seated and ready for tuning. So again, I give basically a turn, maybe a turn and a half on each lug, starting over here and working towards the furthest opposite lug. Let me start with a half turn for now. I'm not really knowing the tuning as yet. So just a half turn on each lug, always moving to the furthest opposite lug you haven't yet tuned. You can hear the glue cracking. And let's have a listen to the drum. Not sounding too bad. Now what we want to do is listen to each individual part of the drum. So we're going to tap the head with the key at each point of the head closest to the tuning rods. And what I'm going to do is mute the bottom head with my hand as I tap each part of the skin. So you can clearly hear a few lugs definitely out of tune there. And the pitch I'm going to look for is basically matching it with the bottom skin, which I have previously tuned. So let me just turn this drum around and lock it up again here. Mute the top head now and just listen to the bottom head. So you can hear one nice clear note coming from each area of the skin there. So that same note Da, da. You're going to have to remember that note in your head as you come back to the top head, as it were. So it's actually a perfect fourth below the fundamental note of the bottom head. Da, da. And some just slide. So what I'm going to do is basically give another half turn to each lug and see where that takes me. Okay, well that's actually pretty close. Again, if we listen to the bottom head, mute the top. Sounds like the top head is actually slightly sharper now than the bottom head, and that might not be a bad thing. Let's have another listen. Very slight variation between a couple of the lugs, but I think once that gets hit a few times with the full force of a drumstick, it might actually stretch that head a little bit further and slightly detune it to match it with the bottom head. So let's see how it sounds with a drumstick. Okay, now I'm basically going to repeat that process for tuning my floor tom. So I'll just remove the existing head here, which has been pretty well worn out. Just nice and quick, several turns to each lug. Just loose enough to unclip those hook lugs. Of course, you don't need to have the Yamaha absolutes in the hook lug. You can pick the traditional absolute lug if you're into that, but I like the idea of being able to replace heads this quickly if necessary, especially in a gig situation where you might have the unfortunate happen and bust a head during a song, and I need to replace one super quick. I think this will pretty much let you allow. So just remove that head, get rid of the old one, put on a new head right there. Again, I'm using Remo Coated Ambassador. So we just pop the head right on there, give a bit of pressure to seat the head initially. Of course, what will really seat your drum heads is when you actually start playing them and start really bashing them with your sticks. And, but I've never actually had a drum head break from damage, and it's pretty important to discern between replacing a drum head from natural wear and from damage. If you find that you're actually breaking and splitting drum heads, you're either playing them with sticks that are damaged and therefore piercing the skin, or you may just be playing a little too hard, or with sticks that are maybe too heavy for the skins that you use. If you're using one-ply coated ambassador skins like this, they're more designed for resonant tuning, which is what we're doing, which means getting a nice full-bodied tone out of the drum. If you like a more of a fat, slapping sort of tone from your toms, you might want to look at using thicker heads like pinstripes or emperors, or some sort of two-ply head that's more designed for more like a punchy, fatter tone and taking more of a beating, you might say. So hooking these hook lugs back on, just putting them in place and giving enough tension to each tension rod so that the hoop and the lug post grab and stop the rattling of the tension rods. Okay, so we haven't started actually tuning the drum yet. We're just putting enough tension in the rods to stop the rattle. We've got to make sure that we haven't actually done any tuning, because if we have tuned one or more lugs and then we start putting some turns into it, we might might overtune some of the lugs and potentially damage the head. But again, before we start tuning, we will seat the head further by making sure it's in place and then applying a firm pressure to the center of the head. You want to hear that glue cracking. Okay. So this is sort of a medium-low sound. Or sometimes if I am doing more of a jazz kit on more of like a bebop tune kit, I'll go for more of a medium-high sound on the floor tom. But let's just start tuning away. We'll give maybe half a turn each to these lugs. Again, I'm using 2 keys, working with the furthest opposite lug. Okay, now with floor toms, I like to just, once I've got a little bit of tension into each head, I actually just like to have a hit and see what I've got. Okay, so what I'm getting from the drum is a nice punchy initial note, but then it sort of tends to decrease in pitch. I'm getting like a bow, bow, as if someone's coming and detuning the drum just after I've struck it. So what that is a difference in tuning between the heads. I'm getting an initial note from the batter skin. I'm getting a sympathetic note from the resonant skin. So what you want to do is basically match up the tones that each of those skins produce once again. So what I'll do is pull the floor tom up onto my knee and listen to the individual notes that the lugs are producing. Okay, it's all fairly vibraty, and I can even feel here that there's loose pockets among my lugs. So to get a clue on where to go from here, I'm going to turn my drum around, mute the resonant head with my knee, and listen to the different tuning points on the resonant head. Okay, so again the drum is producing a nice even tone on each note, on each lug. So I'm going to match the tone of my top head to that same note. See just how far away it is. Quite far indeed. So I'm going to give another half turn to each lug here. Well, actually, maybe just less, maybe a quarter turn. We'll go from there. Okay, just doing that quarter turn, let's have a listen. I was pretty close there until I got to this guy. This guy and this guy are pretty out of tune as well. So let me just slightly take those guys up. This is all about just using your ear, making those fine adjustments until all those lugs are sounding pretty close. Let's go listen to the resonant head again for a reference. Okay, so my batter head or my top head is now sharper than the resonant head, but again, once I start using it, it may slightly detune, and that might be in my favor. It will slightly detune and match with the resonant head. So let's go ahead and have a listen. Okay, I'm still getting that bow, bow sort of sound where the drum sounds like it's detuning after I've struck it. So again, that might be now that I've tuned the top head too high. So let's just slightly take each lug down just maybe an 1/8 of a turn or a 1/16 of a turn. Have a listen. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Just the body of tone it's producing. We don't have so much of a bow wow sound anymore. There's a nice sort of warm, round sound coming from the drum, and it's sort of resonating, decreasing in, decaying, sorry, in resonance fairly evenly. Let's just have one more listen to the individual lugs. So I hope you enjoyed this lesson on how to tune your toms. Have fun tuning your own toms, and I'll see you in the next lesson.